The Pear. 3 years later, and those two words still cast a long shadow over the FNAF fan game community. It wasn't just drama, it wasn't just a leak, it was the single greatest betrayal of trust this community had ever seen. Even now, The Pear stands as the darkest chapter in FNAF fan game history, a scandal so deep its impact is still being felt today. We're going to go back, piece it apart, and then take a closer look on how it all went down. I was following the controversy closely when everything started to fall apart. Watching it unfold in real time was just surreal, and even now, researching this topic, it still does. And by the way, subscribe! I'm still a YouTuber, I gotta squeeze that in somewhere. On June 10th, 2022, an unknown Twitter user by the name of LiamCrush1 dropped a twitlonger titled, "The most widespread FNAF fan game leak in this community." Wait, what do you mean post temporarily unavailable? Hold on a second. And fixed. Thank you, Wayback Machine. Anyways, the purpose of this post was to expose some shady behind-the-scenes behavior within the community that apparently had been happening for a while. At the center of it were three well-known FNAF fan game developers: Ultranite, Raminoff, and Mechless. These were the developers behind Chompers, Juniors, and the Project Readjusted series respectively, and they were also tied to a bunch of other fan game projects across the community over the several years they were active. Okay, sure, if you're comparing them to AAA developers, yes, they're small. They're not exactly out here working on the next Final Fantasy XIV expansion, but within the FNAF fan game community, they're pretty significant. They were big names, and that's what makes this all such a big deal. According to the post, The Pear was a private group chat operating for about a year and a half before it was exposed. It wasn't just the three devs mentioned. There were others who were part of the chat at one point or another, and we know who a few of them are. But here's the thing. Based on what Liam said and what we'll see in Kane Carter's follow-up post here in a bit, I'm inclined to believe that most of these other members didn't do anything malicious, at least in regards to the leaks we'll be talking about. If they had, they likely would have been named and shamed along with the others. At worst, their only crime might have been just being in the chat at some point. Ultranite, Raminoff, and Mechless were the primary ones at fault here, particularly Ultranite, as he seemed to be the ringleader. The accusation was that these three were worming their way into development teams, befriending figureheads of this community, tracking down private accounts, and gaining power on GameJolt, all with the intent to eventually leak everything they had gathered onto 4chan. Also, for some reason, they apparently had Scott Cawthon's wedding photo and personal family photos. This was all hearsay at this point, without any proof except for a statement from Raminoff stating he was planning to leave the community, but without stating exactly why. So how did Liam know about this in the first place? Well, apparently, according to Liam, a source had shared this information with another dev in the community, Kane Carter, the developer of Popgoes, and a key figure in the fanverse, who, in turn, informed Scott Cawthon of the potential leak of his game and confronted Ultranite. Liam was very critical of Kane in this post, accusing him of trying to sweep the situation under the rug for, and I quote, probably stupid reasons. So who was Liam Crush 1? We don't know. According to the post, they were another FNAF fan game developer and claimed to be a victim of The Pear. That does narrow it down, but not by much. Some people speculate it was someone named Nocturna, another dev in the community, but I can find no confirmed evidence. Shortly after Liam's post, Kane released his own twitlonger. Hold on, where's the post? There we go. Got it. The post served as both a response and a confirmation, yes, the Pearl was real, and yes, things were as bad, if not worse, than Liam claimed. And the reason why Kane and his team didn't make everything public? Possible retaliation. The Pear had leaks on Popgoes as well as many other games. Any attack on the Pear could result in potentially dozens of games being leaked, essentially causing a doomsday scenario. This wasn't just speculation on Kane's part. The Pear said they would do it, and Kane dropped the receipts. Discord messages were shared confirming that the Pear was actively conspiring to collect leaks and weaponize them against other devs. Ultranite even had a private Discord server titled, "My Personal Leaks." Real subtle there. Raminoff claimed to have one too. Same purpose, collecting sensitive information from other developers. And the group's biggest target? Anything related to the Fanverse initiative. Apparently they were especially hungry for stuff related to Five Nights at Candy's and Popgoes Evergreen. Oh, excuse me. Popgoes Nevergreen. Got him! Supposedly at one point, Fiznom, the developer of the late FNAF Plus, intentionally fed the Pear false information just to see if it would leak. And sure enough, members of the Pear started bragging about it. And I'm not gonna lie, that's awesome. Those who found out about the Pear preemptively started banning them behind the scenes as a protective measure. If the Pear snapped and leaked everything, a lot of people would be caught in the crossfire. These were the only screenshots Kane said he was willing to share at the moment, and at the very end of Kane's post, he alludes to something more. Everything else, you don't need to see. It's not pretty. I think I know what he was hinting at. In addition to the whole leaking and doxing kerfuffle, there were several posts within the Pear regarding homophobic and transphobic comments. I mention them only because Ultranite admits in his apology that I'll be showing later on that he did indeed share those types of comments, but I'm not gonna dive too far into them right now. See, here's the thing. Even though the Pear controversy is so well known within the FNAF community, it's actually insanely hard to research now. I was around 3 years ago when it all happened and I followed it closely. But while making this video, I didn't want to rely on half memories. I went digging for actual receipts. When it comes down to those comments, I can't find them anywhere. It's like they've been scrubbed from the internet, which quite frankly may not be such a bad thing. I remember that soon after the Pear was leaked, a zip file was dropped on the internet, and supposedly it contained everything. All of the sketchy conversations of the Pear, all neatly organized into folders based on each type of questionable behavior. When I first found it 3 years ago, I downloaded it and skimmed through the leaks, which is how I knew about those tasteless comments. But now, of course, that I'm actually looking for it, I can't find the file. Regardless, it still feels worth mentioning. And even without all that extra stuff, the situation is still pretty bad. And look, I get it. No one wants their private DMs leaked, no matter who you are. Those lovey-dovey texts you share with your significant other, your conversations with your doctor friend about your hemorrhoids, and those goofy conversations you have with the boys. That's all your business. But this wasn't just goofy conversations with the boys. This was plotting. It's one thing to joke around by saying, what if we leak Popgoes? Wouldn't that be crazy? Versus, I social engineered one of the Popgoes team members to give me all the information that they have, and now we have information that we can leak at any time to blackmail Kane Carter. You see the difference? As you can imagine, when the news broke, the FNAF community did not take this lightly. This wasn't just another instance of drama involving one singular developer or YouTuber caught in a controversy. This was a group of well-known developers conspiring behind the scenes. And not just to gossip, but to socially engineer themselves into other communities for their own gain. It felt like a betrayal, because these weren't just random names. These were people whose games fans followed, whose advice other devs trusted, whose work was a part of the growing FNAF history. And all along, some of them were weaponizing that trust. It's really not that uncommon for developers to share stuff with each other. Screenshots, builds, ideas, models. YouTubers and other creative types do the same thing. It creates a sense of community, but in this case, that trust was exploited. These guys pretended to be interested in other people's works. They embedded themselves into Discord servers and private groups not to collaborate, but to spy. So yeah, when the news dropped, the entire community became a lot more cautious and critical. Suddenly, anyone connected to any of these devs was under a microscope, and understandably so. A ton of projects were caught in the blast, but a few were hit especially hard. Ultra Knight's game Chompers was a big one, especially since it had been in talks to become part of the Fanverse initiative. But after the Pear scandal broke, Chompers was canceled. The dev team released the demos that had been made up to that point, basically saying goodbye to the whole project. Ultra Knight was also removed as co-director from Jolly 4. Eventually, Weshek took full control over that project, and well, we all know how that turned out. Juniors was another game that nearly got scrapped. There was a debate in the community about whether it should continue development at all, considering Ramanov's involvement, but the rest of the team publicly distanced themselves from him, and in turn, he distanced himself from the team. And because of that, Juniors actually managed to finish development and release a few months later. However, Ramanov's other project, Five Nights with Talking Ben, was canceled, which what's there to say about this one? Mechless, meanwhile, had been working on a new game called Jet Black, a spiritual successor to the Project Readjusted series. But after everything came out, Jet Black was canceled too, completely scrapped. And you know what really stings? These weren't solo projects. Each of these games had teams behind them. Chompers alone had like 22 people working behind the scenes. Artists, composers, programmers, people who had nothing to do with the Pear, and yet their work was completely undermined. Years of work just gone. Wasted, thrown away because the people in charge couldn't be trusted. Now, personally, I tend to believe in separating the art from the artist in most cases. I don't always think it's black and white. And it's this sort of situation that makes that conversation a lot messier. Because when the behavior of one artist directly affects the art's existence or undermines entire other teams of artists, that's when it becomes more than just a philosophical debate. That's real damage. Each of the devs involved eventually released statements following the exposure. Some were more thorough than others. Ultra Knight had the most lengthy response with an apology on his now defunct GameJolt page. In his post, he took responsibility for his actions in full and announced his departure from the community. It's actually one of the better apologies I've read in the creative space. It seems genuinely honest. Ramonov didn't have much to say, only a statement shared by Liam Crush 1 that he would be taking his leave after Juniors. Mechless had a Discord post taking a more defensive stance on the issue, but without much elaboration. In fact, he tried to deflect by attempting to throw another person under the bus by the name of Tanner Feline, another member of the Pear, essentially claiming that this guy said worse things than me. Again, taking us back to those other non-leak issues. Any transphobic language is never okay, and Tanner Feline has since acknowledged and apologized for their words, as they should. But for Mechless, that's kind of a bad look trying to deflect blame. Pots and kettles, brother. pots and kettles. Ultimately, all 3 developers shut down their Discord servers and YouTube channels, those who had them. And on top of that, GameJolt removed their verification badges, eventually banning Ultra and Ramanov outright. And that's the fallout. Trust was broken, damage was done, games were canceled, developers left, and the community became more cautious moving forward. This whole thing was surprisingly hard to research. Most of the original posts, screenshots, and receipts have either been deleted or they've been buried under more recent drama. At this point, only a few key pieces, namely Liam and Kane's Twitter posts, are publicly available. And even then, you have to use the Wayback Machine to access them. And that is exactly why I wanted to finish this video. As easy as it is for the internet to move on, it's just as easy to forget what actually happened. And when that happens, we risk making the exact same mistakes all over again. The goal here isn't to stir the pot or reignite old fights. It's to document a part of the community's history, to understand how things got this bad, and to make sure that if something like this ever starts bubbling again, we can stop it before it gets out of hand. Because scandals like this don't just hurt the people directly involved, they hurt everyone around them. Fans, dev teams, creators who are just trying to do something cool and get caught in the crossfire. The Pear controversy left a scar on the FNAF fan game community. It reminded everyone that even in a passion-driven space, people can abuse trust for their own gain. And when that trust breaks, the consequences ripple outward, hurting people who had nothing to do with the wrongdoing. I'm hoping that talking about this now leaves us better equipped to identify these red flags in the future, to protect creators, to support actual collaboration instead of manipulation, and to remind ourselves that this community deserves better. Well, at least until the next controversy pops up. There is no escape.